Yesterday by Jeanette Schultz of Salamander Bay, 2317. Narrated by Janine Penfold. Life is what happens while you are busy making other plans. John Lennon. Wind back the clock to June 1964. I was midway through my second year of Teachers College, and Beatlemania was taking the world by storm. I remember the day that the Fab Four, on tour of Australia, arrived in Melbourne. Some of my colleagues took a sickie to be amongst the throngs of adoring fans to welcome them to home soil. One of the absentees went on to receive the prize as Most Outstanding Final Year Student. I would never have dreamed of taking a day off from my training. I lived in a household which condemned the new wave of pop music. Life was to be taken seriously. I qualified well enough to graduate and gain an extension of my studentship to study at university. I thrived on academic learning and gained a degree with several distinctions. But the day finally came when I had to take up a full-time teaching position. Here, life hit me with full force. My Year 2 class included a number of budding hooligans, and the white-haired headmaster was constantly looking over my shoulder to see if I would survive. Somehow I did. The following year, I was assigned to another school and taught a bunch of lively prep graders. But I couldn't get the monkey off my back that I was not good enough in the classroom. The headmaster and infant mistress had very strict standards and discerned quickly that I was too whimsical in my approach to teaching little ones, even though I prepared my lessons well. The stiff formality in the staff room, the dread of the district inspector's visit became unbearable. I collapsed one day in a state of complete physical and emotional exhaustion. I spent months in and out of hospital, recovering from acute pneumonia and burnout. This was the beginning of my exit from the teaching profession. I would have been better off taking an illegal day off to see the Beatles. Fast forward a few years to the 1970s. Released from my bondage with the education department and a former life of academic achievement, I answered an advertisement in a rural newspaper and travelled north in my little Turana to take up a position as a governess at a remote cattle station west of Quilpie in outback Queensland. Red dirt cattle country in the middle of nowhere. I was in charge of 3 young boys who were capable beyond their years in farm management but detested any classroom activities. It didn't work out, and I got out just before flooding rains arrived. I tripped back south and landed with an aunt and uncle who ran a poultry farm in the Southern Highlands of New South Wales. I collected eggs, did odd jobs, played with dogs, listened to ABBA and Mozart on the stereo, learned to knit and make mistakes, fell in love, another story, and embarked overnight on another career. This was never planned. It just happened. One day, suffering a crippling panic attack about what to do with my life, I went to see the nearest GP. He was one of the old-fashioned type. He listened. His prescription? "Why don't you take up nursing?" So I did, the following day. I started as a first-year trainee at a general hospital in outer Western Sydney. In those days, nurses' training was hospital-based. We had no ward assistants, and the pan room had to be kept spotless at all times, especially when matron was doing her rounds. I learned how to deliver bedpans and urinals, sponge patients, make beds, take temperatures, measure blood pressures, test urine, dress wounds, give enemas, attend to the unimaginable without soiling my white apron or running away from the scene. I was expected to follow orders from my superiors Second and third year nurses senior in rank to me. The sisters, registered nurses who still wore white veils, the nursing supervisors, the matron, and the medical superintendent. I did long stints of shift work, including night duty, while studying to pass exams of human anatomy and physiology, the management of acutely ill patients, surgical procedures, medications and their side effects, and much more. Through discipline and routine, I became a pretty good nurse, mainly by showing up for my shift and setting my mind to the task in hand. Most of the trainees, including myself, lived in the nurses' quarters across the road, a safe haven where we could unpack the events of the day without fear of judgment or condemnation for being human and making mistakes. There was no such thing as trauma counselling in those days. Black humour had its place as a shock absorber, but stayed within those walls. The camaraderie we shared saved me from my own self-criticism, helped shape me, make me into a human who had something to give. I passed my final exams with flying colours and was put in charge of a medical ward of 30 patients. I also tutored, worked in neurology and renal units before training in midwifery and caring for mothers and newborn infants. This I did until my retirement. Not having the good fortune to have children of my own has left a space, an emptiness. But I don't believe this has made me a lesser human being. I thank my godparents who took me on as their apprentice to learn about life many decades ago. The privilege of being their primary carer in their golden years, into their 80s and 90s, has shaped me too. Living in solitude by the sea is where I am now. A space to reflect, write poetry, listen to birdsong, read books, daydream, and dig in the garden. The memories of yesterday, their richness and humour, their beauty and humanity make me the person I am today, and continue to make me. I will one day fit softly back into the earth I came from. Oh, I believe in yesterday. Paul McCartney. The end.